Hey guys, what's up? It is week 245. I have a bunch of reviews for you, so let's just jump right into this. Well, actually, next week I think I'll have like a top 10 for you, or whatever, top 20, whatever I decide to do, top 10, top 15 horror movies of 2021. We recorded our top 10 on 22 shots, so it's over there if you want to hear it earlier, and it's a really long show, so if you're interested, it's on YouTube, Spotify, everywhere else. But yeah, I'll probably just do a little quick kind of rundown of my top 20 horror films of 2021. Nothing too elaborate considering I only watched like 64. I did really terrible for this year, actually, for last year, I should say. So let's hop into the reviews. And the first one up is definitely not from 2021. This is from 1977. This is Mario Bava, the Italian maestro's last directed horror film, although he did help on Dario Argento's Inferno. Supposedly he shot the awesome underwater sequence, which is probably one of the finest sequences in the film, if not the finest. So Mario Bava is considered one of the big three Italian horror directors, along with Dario Argento and Lucio Fulci, at least in America. You know, that's what I always hear, and maybe contemporary. There's also there's other solid Italian directors, of course, but Mario Bava really is kind of like, I feel like when you hear interviews and everything, the most well-respected from the other Italian directors. Even Fulci, like, you hear him always badmouth everybody else. You don't really hear him badmouth Mario Bava. I'm sure he probably did, but I never heard him do it in interviews and everything like that. So Shock is actually also known as Beyond the Door Part 2. That's a loose series. The first one was a Exorcist ripoff, Beyond the Door, and then there was the sequel, Shock, which nothing to do with the Exorcist or anything like that. And then the third one was Amok Train, which Vinegar Syndrome put out. In fact, all three are worth checking out, and I think the second and third one are actually better than the first in the Beyond the Door series. Now, the first time I ever saw Shock was actually on one of the Anchor Bay DVDs. It was a double feature, and it might have been the first Mario Bava movie I'd ever seen. And now, I didn't really know Mario Bava as I do today. I just knew his name in passing, and I might have seen Bay of Blood. I'm not 100% sure. So it wasn't something that was incredibly like special to me. I was very young in my early, teens, 13, 14 years old or something along those lines. So I haven't grown the love for Mario Bava that I have nowadays, or the respect, I should say. And he's pretty much one of the most capable directors, horror directors from Italy ever. I mean, the guy was a cinematographer. He was perfect at doing in-camera special effects and all that kind of stuff. So Shock was like one of the last ones of his films that was not released on Blu-ray. So everybody was kind of waiting, and all the other ones had hit Blu-ray as far as his horror films are concerned. So it was very kind of exciting that Arrow was going to put this one out, and I definitely wanted to see the new edition. So this stars Daria Nicolodi, who is married to Dario Argento and frequent collaborator of Argento's. This is, I think, the only time that Mario Bava directed her. It also has John Steiner in here, who was a collaborator with a ton of great Italian directors. He was in Tenebrae by Dario Argento. He was in Cut and Run. He was in Caligula. He is one of the most, well-known character actors from Euro horror. I think he's a very good actor. Also, Ivan Rasimov makes an appearance in this. He's in a ton of movies, so it has a really solid cast in the film. Mostly it's a three-hander, though. There's mostly three kind of main actors in the film: John Steiner, Daria Nicolodi, and of course the young child. So everybody knows kind of the history of Italian cinema with young children kind of dubbing and all that stuff. This is not nearly as atrocious as something like Bob from House by the Cemetery, which is like the number one complaint about that movie. And I just say forget it, okay? If you can't get over that, just the movie's not for you. I love House by the Cemetery. The dubbing doesn't bother me too much. So that's kind of an infamous thing. But the dubbing in this one's fairly solid. So essentially what happens is Daria Nicolodi is kind of pressured into moving back to an old house that she owned in her family with her previous husband, who kind of mysteriously disappeared. John Steiner is a pilot, airplane pilot, so he's kind of never around. They move back into this house, and the child starts to act very strange. They start to have strange kind of weird things around the house, and you've known that she's kind of one of these people that had a mental breakdown earlier. It's a very kind of almost like contrived storyline in that sense, like how we always have, that there was a whole book written on that kind of stuff, The House of Psychotic Women, and all those kind of things like that. I've never got a chance to read it, but I know it's based on just kind of the horror films where like the women are supposed crazy and all that kind of stuff. But it's always in here. Like there's always this kind of like storyline: is it haunted? Are they crazy? All this, and then there's like gaslighting and all that stuff. But so you start to get some real weird moments. Like the child almost seems like he's sexually kind of controlled, and he witnesses John Steiner and Daria, his parents, and his stepfather, his mother and stepfather having sex, and then he tries to reenact it at one point when he's playing with his mother, and I felt that was very disturbing. I didn't remember too much of the movie, to be honest. The one thing that I think is really amazing about the movie is how Mario Bava does his camera tricks, or how he uses the camera. I mean, there's a lot of one takes or just one shots where it doesn't change like camera angles or anything, or it's just a oneer and stuff like that, and a lot of tricks just happen with the swing. The run down the hallway, which I won't spoil, is very effective and very cheap too, and it works really well. It's just a very well done scare, and the very ending is super gothic, and I love the gothic kind of touch to it. And it all makes sense. A lot of these a lot of horror films you watch, hauntings and things, like by the end of the movie you're like, that didn't make any sense, that doesn't work at all. But this one you're like, oh, that's perfect. And it almost reminds me of something like the other Italian kind of bonkers gialli, In the Folds of the Flesh. People call it a gialli. I don't know how to categorize that movie. In the Folds of Flesh is a wild movie from 1970. But yeah, it kind of has a similarity to that, where obviously something traumatic has happened more than once. I would share, they do share a lot more DNA in the storyline than you would expect. But yeah, this one's really well done. I mean, Daria Nicolodi is excellent in the movie. John Steiner is excellent. So the acting's solid. It's all set up very well. And it's a storyline that you've seen before. I don't think that it's going to be anything completely different. But I think it's very effective. And I love the ending. It's a really nice touch. And a pickaxe is a great weapon at the very end. I would really recommend checking out the film if you've not seen it. As far as the special features are concerned, they got everybody and their brother involved with this release, which is good. So first and foremost, it looks great. It sounded great. I was very impressed with the quality. So there's new audio commentary by Tim Lucas, author of Mario Bava, All Colors of the Dark, who is essentially one of the best. He is probably the voice on Mario Bava, when you think about it. He does all the commentaries, tons of commentaries for Mario Bava on the Kino Lorber and the Arrow stuff, and I just love his voice. I love how he had the insight on Mario Bava. He talks about the very end is very touching of his commentary. It brought a tear to my eye when he brings up Daria Nicolodi and Mario Bava. And never mind with Daria showing up with learning gardening from Mario. I don't want to spoil it, but it's just wonderful. So if you appreciate his commentaries, that's a very highly recommended commentary you should check out. A Ghost in the House, a new video interview with co-director and co-writer Lamberto Bava, who actually worked partially as an assistant director on the film, son of Mario Bava, of course, frequent collaborator with Dario Argento, so a great Italian director himself. Via del Orglano, 33, a new interview with co-writer Dardano Sacchietti, who is one of the most infamous, I would say, Italian horror writers. Though I shouldn't even say infamous or famous for an Italian writer, because most times, like, the screenwriters and the story concept people, they don't ever get really credit. But this guy was the most prolific, I should say. He worked with Fulci. He was responsible for, like, all Fulci's most popular stuff. So then we have The Devil Pulls the Strings, a new video essay by author and critic Alexandra Heller-Nicholas. She kind of breaks down on why she likes this movie so much. It's a visual essay. It's really well done. So I sometimes, that was the first feature I watched, and this was one of the first movies I watched this week, so I'm a little stale on that. Then we have Shock Horror, the stylish diversity of Mario Bava, a new video appreciation by author and critic Stephen Thrower. So like I said, we have so many people involved with this, and they all do a great job. The Most Atrocious Torture, a new interview with critic Alberto Farnina. And then there's also, I feel like there's liner notes by Troy Howarth, and I don't want to leave Troy Howarth out because he's one of my favorite people that is involved with this stuff. Yeah, Troy Howarth did some liner notes as well. So if you are a fan of Shock, which I think that most Mario Bava enthusiasts will be, this is a really good release, and I was very happy to see it. His last directed film, and not my least favorite from him. I've enjoyed all his films that I've seen. I think the only horror-oriented movie I haven't seen by him, and I know this is a big kicker, I'm going to take a lot of shit for this one, is The Girl Who Knew Too Much with John Saxton. So yeah, anyway, Shock, great stuff. Really recommend checking this release out. And great to see this on Blu-ray finally. So good stuff. You need this one if you're a fan of Bava. Okay, this next one here is another one from Arrow Video, and this is called Sleep. And this is, I believe, a German horror film, if I'm not mistaken. I believe it is. I had to double check there. And I was really impressed with this one. This one, technically, I believe, came out in 2021. I think it was on their streaming service. I'm not 100% sure on that. But I wish I would have watched it in 2021. I probably would have tossed it in maybe my top 20. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, so when you kind of involve sleep and all that kind of weird stuff, and like, like right away that it's going to be kind of a bonkers, horror-oriented, weird, strange thing. And there was another horror film that came out last year that involved a lot of sleep and dreams and stuff like that called Come True, which was really effective and very popular among a lot of people. So, okay, this one is really bizarre here. So we have this mother and daughter that are kind of the main characters here, and the mother suffers from some sort of ailment. She never seems to be healthy. She has very strange nightmares and everything like that. And the daughter's kind of taking care of her, that deal. And she kind of, the mother travels for work. So she's always talking about this kind of strange place where she visits in her dreams. And there's a lot of suicides and everything. And it's haunted her for her entire life. So she basically has to go somewhere for work. I believe that's how the catalyst of this, how things get started. And she ends up stopping at this hotel. And the hotel looks exactly like the place in her dreams. And when she spots three people's pictures on the wall, she realizes those are the men who actually committed suicide in her dreams. After that, she kind of goes completely comatose. She shuts down. She ends up in a hospital nearby, and her daughter has to come visit her. And her daughter stays at that hotel because there's no really anywhere else to stay. And so she can start to kind of do some research as why her mother had this weird comatose state on her. So she starts to kind of look around. She meets the owners, the very kind of cold and distant, matriarch of the family, and then the patriarch of the family seems like jovial, but there's just some underlining stuff about him. He's just really ambitious and really proud and loves his country, loves Germany, loves this hotel, loves this town, wants to save this town, and the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I'll put that as best as I can say about this guy. So, anyways, he starts to elaborate on this place. They're surrounded by beautiful nature and everything like that, and come to find out there is a dark past that involves the mother and the daughter and these two people that run this hotel. And I don't want to spoil anything because I've already kind of said enough on that situation, but there's images of suicide in here that took place in this hotel. And I would say that some people probably would compare this to Shining because we have this kind of strange, creepy hotel surrounded by wilderness, and it almost seems isolated, but it's not exactly. But it also kind of tackles the issue of, nationalism and all that kind of shit in your country, and it also feels like it's somewhat of pro-environment kind of film. But it turns out that there is some special powers and some controlling in the nightmares and dreams and everything like that. And I thought that was quite effective. I thought that the acting was really well done from everybody, especially the two people that run the hotel. I thought that they were fantastic. And the male, I just seen him. I knew he looked very familiar. He was excellent. But it's a very intriguing mystery. And as it goes on further and further, you get more intrigued. And to me, a lot of people were saying on the Letterboxd reviews, I always check Letterboxd to see where I gauge like how much I like a movie, and then I see how it compares to everyone else to see how crazy I am or how crazy they are, I think, yada, yada, yada. But honestly, a lot of people were saying that they got lost and they were a little confused by it. But, I have been lost in certain films. Come True, the ending kind of lost me to a certain extent. Well, this one I followed fairly easy. At least maybe people wanted more in depth of what was happening, but I kind of got the gist of it. And that's all I need for something like this. I don't need you to explain all the rules of these kind of crazy dream powers and things like that. Then we started to get into like Nightmare on Elm Street, and you're just like, the science of Freddy Krueger never makes fucking sense from sequel to sequel. But this one I kind of gathered, and I really enjoyed it. I think it's well acted. I think it has a lot of good, social commentary. I think it's well shot. The location's really nice. It's just a really well done movie, and it's satisfying to me. There is some special features on here, which I don't want to leave out because I know there was a lot of stuff that was kind of involved with like dreams and things like that. And so we have an audio commentary by critic and historian Kim Newman and Sean Hogan. So Kim Newman's one of the best as well. A Strange Dark Magic, a visual essay by film scholar Alexandra Heller Nicholas, who we saw in the Shock Blu-ray. Sleepwalking Through National Trauma, a visual essay by film critic Anton Beitel. Dream and Folk Tale and Sleep, an interview with anthropologist, dream researcher, and filmmaker Louise S. Menil. This is No Dream, a short introduction by director Michael Venus and co-star and star Gro. I'm going to pass on her name. I feel bad, but it's very hard to pronounce for me. Talking in Their Sleep, director Michael Venus and star Again, in conversation, A Dream We Dream Together, a compilation of film festival introductions created during lockdown by the director and cast. Making Dreams Come True, a glimpse behind the scenes of Dream, deleted scenes. Marlene's sketches explore the many obsessive dream journal sketches that are only glimpsed in the film, created by artist Christopher Vignold, presented here in full. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff to check out in this one. I really thought it was a really cool film, a lot of good imagery and everything like that, and good reveals. So I would recommend checking this one out. And it's one of these movies that's very strange, and you're like, well, I think I know what's going on, and as it goes on, there's more reveal, and you're like, okay, now I'm pretty good in exactly knowing what's going on. Not necessarily how it works, but I don't need that. So Sleep, good stuff. Check it out. Okay, the next one is a 4K from one of the best companies doing 4Ks out there, Blue Underground. And this is the 1978 Video Nasty, that's right, Toolbox Murders, starring Cameron Mitchell. Need I say more? The first thing I have to say, because this has been stuck in my head ever since I rewatched this one, LOLLIPOP spells lollipop. Yeah, and they used that in one of the special features, the old featurettes, they ported over. They use Cameron Mitchell saying that. Funny enough, there is a podcast I listen to called "Hello, This Is the Doom Show," and that's in their introduction, and I don't blame them for using it. It's very catchy. Cameron Mitchell. I love Cameron Mitchell. Always great, even if the movies aren't. So, Toolbox Murders opens up, and at the end kind of suggests maybe this is possibly based on a true story. I don't know the truth behind that. I know that there was the Toolbox murderers or killers that were some really. I think that took place after. I'm not sure the timeline. I don't think that this is based on that case, which is highly disgusting. But so we have this person in the very opening. We have a car accident that looks like point of view. It reminds me a little bit. The opening style, the first 15-20 minutes, reminds me a little bit of Maniac, with a kind of sleazy killer going around and killing everybody like that. So essentially the first 30 minutes of the film, we have the car accident point of view that's really kind of stylized in 70s, but after that we have some really brutal murders involving obviously tools. So we have this kind of this mass killer, which is an iconic look with the winter hat and just the eyes cut out, going around and killing about 4 people in brutal ways. The last one is probably the most graphic and exploitative, I would say, involving a woman masturbating in the tub, and then she's kind of taken out with a drill gun or nail gun, which is actually pretty cool. And the first time they do those effects, at first you're like, that doesn't look very good, because you see her and she just grabs her stomach and you're like, that was kind of cheap. But then she falls, or she moves forward and you see the nail in the back and on the blood, and you're like, oh, that was actually way more effective than you thought. Kind of like if you have a cut and at first there's a deep cut, there's no blood, and then for a second then it comes out. It kind of had that effect where you're like, oh, it's not that bad, and then she moves and you're like, oh shit. But yeah, like I said, the first 30 minutes it's an absolute sleaze fest, and I think a lot of people end up getting disappointed with this movie because they have that hit opening, and then it kind of slows down a little bit. So in the beginning, the killer kills the 4 people and kidnaps a young girl, and then for a long time we follow the storyline of the brother trying to find the girl and his best friend, who is related to, spoiler alert, even though it's not really a spoiler, Cameron Mitchell, who ends up being the Toolbox murderer. So yeah, anyways, Cameron Mitchell in this film carries pretty much the whole thing on his shoulders. They say in the special features the director mentions, he says that he came to Cameron Mitchell, who is a professional actor, who was in a lot of B movies, probably because alimony, according to David Duvall in the special features. And he says, man, we're in trouble. And he says, what's wrong? And he says, we're about 10 minutes short. And he says, okay, I got it. So he went home, and I guess he wrote this whole scene himself, and he memorized it, and he came in the next day, and there's this scene in the movie where it just comes to a halt, where he talks to the kidnapped person, and he just gets into the psychology of this character 110%, and you kind of understand that he's like a missionary killer. He's like trying to save their souls, and he doesn't like the filth and all that kind of shit. So he starts talking to the girl. He's like, she was filthy, and that's where the lollipop little song comes in, and the conversation he has with her is really just amazing, and he's very scary and very intimidating and very sweaty, and it's just kind of a masterclass in kind of B movie acting, to be honest. And I mean, he's an A-list actor in a B movie, but after you do so many B movies, do you lose your A-lister status? I don't know. Anyways, I've always loved Cameron Mitchell in films, whether it's in the early Mario Bava stuff like Blood and Black Lace, or it's in stuff like The Offspring, aka From a Whisper to a Scream, where he plays a kind of a bad soldier, a Yankee soldier in that movie. But anyways, he always delivers on the goods, and he's always entertaining to watch. And this movie, he's actually tremendous in here. There's actually a couple touching moments moments, which just kind of elevate these exploitation movies sometimes. And that's really what the exploitation movies that stand out to me are the ones that, they are explicit and they do pack a punch, but they always have a moment of like a poignant moment, character moment where I'm like, oh shit, that really means something to me, or that's a very deep message. Cannibal Holocaust has that to me, and there's a lot of them that do. I Spit on Your Grave has those moments where I'm just like, they put those little details in that make it seem like genuinely real or saying something. Some people would argue, and that's okay, or disagree, and that's fine too. But there's a couple moments in here that I thought were really nice character moments, especially when Cameron Mitchell is kind of just he's basically giving his big speeches and monologues and everything like that into his psyche. A lot of it written by Cameron Mitchell, apparently, basically the day before. But I love when they talk about heaven, and you find out it is purple, just that kind of stuff. Like I said, the first act is tremendous, and all Cameron Mitchell stuff is great. The other stuff, kind of searching for her, the missing girl, are okay. They're fine. They're pretty standard. They feel like television stuff, and I believe this director worked in a lot of television, so that kind of explains it. As far as the picture quality is concerned, it looks great. I mean, you never would think the Toolbox Murders would look this fantastic. The Dolby Atmos is amazing. Like everything is perfect. Like all the surround sound speakers, they work really well. It's the Dolby Atmos on these Blue Underground. Like when I upgraded my sound system and my television, I noticed the picture quality and stuff on 4K and HDR looked great, but the sound system is what impressed me the most. And the Blue Underground Dolby Atmos stuff is some of the best stuff I liked. I think it's great. But let's hop into the special features here. So a lot of these are ported over, but there is some new ones. So the audio commentary with producer Tony Dito and director photography Gary Graver, and star Pamela Ferdin is old. But then we have a new commentary with Troy Howarth and Nathaniel Thompson. They do mention the opening being kind of reminiscent of Gialli's and stuff like that. And then some new special features. I'll read the new ones on here. Drill Sergeant interview with director Dennis Donnelly, which was great to hear. That's where I heard that story about Cameron Mitchell. New Tools of the Trade interview with star Wesley Erie. New that is the kind of the Cameron Mitchell's nephew, and he actually had some nice insight, and he did put some nice little character touches in there too. He said he came up with when he lit the match, he would say fire, fire, that little thing there. That was a nice touch. New Flesh and Blood interview with actress Kelly Nichols. There's an old one with her as well, and she's very candid about the whole situation. New, this one I love, Slashback Memories. David Dahl remembers Cameron Mitchell, and he's like a film historian. He knows tons about movies, and he had actual relationships with a lot of the people from old Hollywood and all that stuff. He just kind of knows all this stuff, so he gives you a lot of spicy little tidbits that I thought were absolutely hilarious. And then we have new They Know I Have Been Sad video essay by film historian Amanda Reyes and filmmaker Chris O'Neill. So yeah, this is a really nice release. I mean, if you have not been picking up the 4Ks from Blue Underground, I would recommend them. Yeah, and I love that Blue Underground's putting this stuff out. So I can kind of have like bragging rights against people that are like, oh, my favorite movies are these classic movies. I'm like, where's the 4K? I got Toolbox Murders on 4K. That must mean it's much more important. And I know I'm just busting her ball. That's not how shit works. But hey, it's great to have it on 4K nonetheless. Okay, get your Pervert card ready. If you don't have it, you're going to have to, fast forward, skip this review. But for you people that are Pervert card carrying members, here is Asami in Prison Girl. That's right, one of the Pink Inga releases from 2008. Director of Vampire Girl vs. Frankenstein Girl and Maid Droid. So a couple movies that I am vaguely familiar with. I don't think I ever get a chance to check them out. So, okay, this one is a bizarre one. It's relatively short, about 65 minutes or something like that. And this is kind of a Japanese woman in prison flick, but it's a little different than that. It becomes softcore at a lot of times, and it also is kind of one of these mind bender movies. So we have like this bored housewife who is in a relationship with her husband. Of course, she's married. Bored housewife in a relationship. I'm double stating everything here, but she kind of has her husband comes home one day and says, "Well, we have to kind of I want to loan my friend this money, yada yada yada." And all this kind of situations, but she starts to kind of hallucinate like in her like boredom and like sexual fantasies, where she ends up being in this prison and starts to kind of like blur reality and everything like that. So the prison stuff, at first she gets in and the guards kind of molest her, and they're just like, the typical stuff, like take down your clothes, we have to inspect you, full body inspection shit, all that kind of shit. But as it goes on, it will jump back and forth, and you're like, oh, so she's just like in her fantasy, and then you start to wonder, which fantasy is real now? Is it actually in prison and she's fantasizing about being the housewife, or is she actually a housewife fantasizing about being in prison, or is the housewife life the previous life she had before she was a prisoner? So we have all that kind of stuff and everything. So at times it reminds me of the Rude Awakening, just for a split second. The Rude Awakening from the Hammer House of Horrors with Demhell Elliott, and I have not watched that since I was a kid, but I definitely remember the whole mixture of life and dreams and not being able to tell them apart and possibly doing something horrific in real life due to it. So I can see that kind of aspect in here. Like I said, I guess maybe it was a little bit more softcore than I expected, because there's a full-out sex scene with 2 prison guards that seems to last quite a bit. The actress, the main star of this, is a pornographic actress, so she's in a handful of, she's probably in a bunch of pornos. She's in a lot of Pink Ingu films too. So they have like an interview with her talking about it. She seems actually really just down to earth and friendly and all that kind of stuff too. So that was nice to see. As far as the movie, like I said, it delivers on the sexual goods and all that kind of stuff. If you're looking, it delivers on the sleaze, if that's what you're into. Yeah, and it has some interesting stuff too. It gives you a little bit of meat to grab onto. No pun intended. But you guys get exactly what I'm talking about. So there's a little bit of stuff to kind of explore and guess what the hell exactly is happening. It's a little interesting. So all in all, I enjoyed it. I mean, it's not gonna, knock your socks off unless you're using them for something else, but you get the point. That is Asami in Prison Girl. So it also has an AK name. The Japanese name is much longer. Yeah, so I don't remember the Japanese name, but these Japanese films usually, especially the pinky films or the sexual ones, usually have multiple names and translations and all that good stuff. So if you're interested, check it out. I do enjoy these Pink Inga films. They're very short, they're very perverse, and they just kind of deliver on what you're looking for when it comes to these movies for sure. Okay, so we're here for a Patreon pick, and I made you watch this with me because I feel like I would be completely lost without having someone to bounce off of. So this is a remake of, well, it's based off the same material. We'll put it that way. I never say this writer's name right. We got corrected last time, and I'm still gonna say it wrong this time. What is it? It's Roald Dahl. So
Roald Dahl?
Roald Dahl, I think. Well, he was the writer of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and of course The Witches, which was made into a 1990 movie, which we covered on here for a pick I think I gave you. So yeah, this is the 2020 remake. This has Anne Hathaway, Octavia Spencer, Chris Rock, and Stanley Tucci. I'd say are the most memorable names in the film. So it's essentially the same story. In society, there's a bunch of witches that go around and hate children. They smell them. They're gross. They have long nails, gross toes. They're bald, all sorts of things. So Anne Hathaway is the leader of these witches. Chris Rock's parents at a young age die really tragically, so he has to move in with his grandma, played by Octavia Spencer. She believes in all the kind of witchcraft and magic and witches and everything like that, and always warns him of the things. So one day they decide to try to get away from a witch that put a hex on her, gave her a little cold, and believes is after him. So they go to this big fancy hotel. Lo and behold, the witches are actually having their yearly gathering for this big plot to turn all the children into mice. At this hotel, Stanley Tucci is pretty much the main kind of, I'd say, hotel manager or whatever the hell. And yeah, ridiculousness ensues after our lead character is turned to a mouse, along with a little fat boy, fat rich boy. I can't think, Bruno. So yeah, it's ungodly cute. Now a lot of people really hate this movie, and I don't know if it's probably not based. Maybe it's inaccurate to the source material. I've never read the book. I know that probably The Witches was not very close to the source material. I know that the writer always hated the adaptations of his movies. Of his books. He hated the movies. So
that could be.
Anyways, I didn't have very high expectations for this. We watched it on HBO Max. But I will say this: it is a kids movie. And I just put my guard down. And at first I was a little iffy, but I found it actually kind of charming and entertaining for what it was.
Yeah, I mean, it's very much in line with like the movie. Was it like 92 the movie came
90.
out? Right? 90. I wouldn't. I mean, the differences are minor. Comparing movie to movie. I don't know so much about the book. I think the only 2 books of his that I ever read are.
I read Charlie and
the Chocolate Factory. And did he do James and the Giant Peach?
Probably.
I feel like he did.
Probably.
It just seems in the same vein.
Yeah.
This book I never read. I always wanted to read. I always wanted to watch the movie. So Yeah, I mean, this remake or this version of Witches and the other version of Witches, it's more or less the same thing. The settings are a bit different, as opposed to it being like Europe. It's now in like the American South,
which I kind of liked.
I did like that. I thought that was a nice change. I think Octavia Spencer is fantastic. She's one of my favorite actresses.
Yeah. If you had to have a grandma like take care of you, you'd want it to be Octavia Spencer. She's just an excellent actress. I always loved her.
I just had this thing for Octavia Spencer. She's just so much fun.
It's me, Ma.
Yeah, I think she's fantastic. Ma,
she
fantastic
single-handedly makes Mom a great film.
I think the first time I saw her was in Shape of Water. The first time I saw her and like recognized, like, I know that girl, and like she has always appeared as like background
she's been
characters.
acting for years. She was like a character actor before. I believe I noticed her. I recognized her as you would any other character actor that didn't have like a name yet.
But I feel like Shape of Water was like her name movie.
Well, I know she probably had a couple roles before that I knew who she was. I knew she was in Halloween 2. She was a small role in that, but like Shape of Water was kind of like, oh shit, this is a great role. She's great in it. Mm-hmm. So it's a serious supporting role. And yeah, and ever since then, I've always looked out for her and watched the stuff that interested me.
Right, it's like I've always been, I always want to see her if she pops up in something. And Anne Hathaway is like having the time of her life playing this role.
Very bizarre performance. What I really liked about her is her power. She can kind of stretch her arms out really gross. Yeah. And they use that a lot. That was cute.
Yeah, she the original what's her name? Angelica Houston.
Yeah.
They pup her up. They make her look like very troll-like. I think there might be a bug in here.
There's not a bug. You hit the wire to the left.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
They make her very troll-like, but she doesn't really do a whole lot of, like, manipulation of her body beyond,
there's no CGI. So
yeah,
there's
no
a practical
CGI
versus here. And
right.
The practical effects in the original are much better, I would say. But this has more of a flavor of what you expect nowadays for something that's semi-family friendly, like the CGI, over-the-top CGI. And I don't mind
it does have, like, a very animated feel to it. You see Anne Hathaway do a bit more body contortion, like magic stuff.
Let me get this point before I get the talking mice. Now, in the original, they're adorable because they're like these little Henson puppets, Henson creations, which are excellent. You can't beat. But here, they have a CGI to them. So when they make like the cat, they're supposed to be live, like action cat CGI. It makes it's kind of a little bit more forgivable because they're already like CGI rats that talk. So like when you see the CGI, to have that be a real cat I don't know what would be better because the cat does a lot of strange things. It would be harder for them to make it with a real cat, I think.
And that's I tend to forgive CGI animals, and it's only because
sometimes the CGI animals are the least forgivable. But if you already have CGI animals that are talking, and then you add a CGI cat, it's just kind of like, who gives a fuck at that point?
I'm always like weird on like animal safety. What do they do to this poor animal that doesn't really have like the will to consent to like being thrown across the room or
that fucking dog and cat wanted to get in that hot air balloon.
Right, exactly.
I asked them beforehand. They said it was okay. They signed their whatever
death certificate.
Death certificate. What they did. Yeah.
Also aviation license. No.
He was wearing the goggles.
It depends on to what extent. I think I just now that we have the technology or the ability to.
I understand completely.
Like it makes sense. Like they're not like the focus of the movie. Although I have seen animal-centric CGI movies like that. I'm going to say Fist of the North Star, but that's not the damn movie.
What are you talking about?
The dog, and he goes up to Alaska. He's like a St. Bernard. Call of the Wild.
Is it St. Bernard goes up to Alaska?
I think he's like a St. Bernard.
I don't think it's a St. Bernard.
You think
is that the one with
Liam Neeson?
I didn't watch that.
Not Liam Neeson.
Call of the Wild. It is Liam Neeson.
No, it's Woody Harrelson. Not Woody Harrelson.
Liam Neeson.
No, who's not Obi-Wan. Harrison Ford.
It's Harrison Ford.
It's Harrison Ford, yeah.
Harrison Ford. That's Han Solo. Why did I think it was Liam Neeson? Isn't he in a movie in a fucking Dog in the Winter too?
I think he's in Taken.
He isn't Taken.
He's in Taken, but what's the one where he fights the wolf with a knife?
That is
I don't know.
I can't remember.
I think that might
be The Gray. That's called The Gray.
It's called Fist of the North Star.
No, it's not. Fist of the North Star is an anime that was made into a live action movie with fucking Chris Penn where he gets hit in the head. So we're back to The Witches.
Yeah.
And for the most part I enjoyed it. Stanley Tucci is way better than he has any right to be in this movie. Yeah. He's a great actor, but he does a very good job. I love his interactions with Anne Hathaway. They're very funny, and he's just kind of like, his faces are made. I mean, like, because it's a small role. It's not really a role that would be very rewarding. I mean, unless you're doing a Rowan Atkinson, where you're kind of just being like a slapstick kind of guy, and like the original. But he's kind of a little bit downplayed here, and I feel like his performance is really good. Octavia Spencer again steals the show. This ends on kind of a downbeat because they cut out the good witch completely.
They do cut
in this
out.
one. So the whole story ends on kind of a downbeat, and I know that some people had some complaints about that, and it is a little dark for this kind of fairy tale lighthearted ending. And there's also the character of Daisy, which I felt was a little forced because his pet mouse actually was a kid too, was turned into a mouse, and it's a little bit ridiculous. The idea that the witches have to take this potion and sell it in candy places is really fun. So of course you get all the different variety of witches from all around the world again. So Anne Hathaway in this one is Scandinavian instead of actually being from, I don't remember, Eastern Europe or something like that. So anyways, Anne Hathaway, you probably want to put on the subtitles if you can, because she was fucking insanely all over the place. She's like, I don't even know how to do her accent or an impersonation of her accent or even really what her accent was. But I enjoyed this one. Like I said, it was
super fun.
The flashback stuff is really cool too in the South.
Flashback was cool. Just like the time period pieces I thought was really nice. The Daisy character was a little bit meh, and it wasn't even so much about her character as much it was like all the questions that it raised, and I didn't particularly care for the voice actress. I don't know who it was. It just grated my damn ears.
It wasn't even the voice actress's fault. It was the choice they made that voice actors do.
Yeah.
They made like a super forced Southern thing. It felt like such a studio note. It was like, can we get a female mouse character so the other girls can because the boys are going to have the fat kid and the black kid.
Right.
Can we get a female Southern one so we can appeal to more people? I really feel like it's a studio. I didn't hate the character. It just felt kind of forced, to be honest.
She was just unneeded. And
they do some of that cheesy shit too, where they're like, "Yeah, guys, that's awesome," and you're just like, but then it's tonally kind of fucked because they'll do that, and then spoiler at the very end, they're still mice, and they're all aging rapidly, and they're just like, he's all old mouse, and the grandma hasn't aged a day, but he's gonna die in like.
there was a, spoiler alert, but like. Like when he's a mouse, he's like, well, Grandma, how long do mice live? And she's like, oh, I'd say maybe 3 years. But imagine a human mouse, that could be like 3 times as much. I'm like, man, that's only 9 years. You won't even be out of your 60s yet.
Yeah, Octavia Spencer will outlive her grandchild.
Right.
So that's, and you feel so bad for this fucking kid.
Right. You feel bad for Octavia Spencer because she already lost her daughter. Now her grandson's a rat.
And she couldn't make up a spell, and they don't. I bet they follow the book more close to that because Del Toro produced this. I don't know. Anyways, I really want some Octavia Spencer's cooking. Give me those fucking chicken wings that kid didn't eat. I love chicken wings.
Oh yeah, she did make chicken wings.
Huge.
Yeah, and that. It was the cornbread looked really good.
I just want the wings.
I don't know. It was good. I give it for what it is, like a 4 out of 5.
Well, that's pretty high. I give it like a 7 out of 10. I mean,
a 4 out of 5 and a 7 out of 10 are literally the same score.
No, they're not. One would be a 3.5. So I am one to try to rate kids stuff on what it is. Like, now if an adult was like, that movie's terrible. I remember when that new Ninja Turtles movie came out. Like, I had no interest in seeing it because I watched the other Ninja Turtles and that was my Ninja. But I didn't care. Like, to see grown adults being like, that movie looks terrible. It's like, you're 40. Who gives a fuck about Ninja Turtles? This shit ain't made for you anymore. Like, I understand that you're upset about it, and you could enjoy it still, but it's not. You're not the audience anymore.
Hey, we already gave the score to the movie. You have gone past the time of ranting on an unrelated topic. We actually need to move on to the next movie.
All right.
Okay,
this next one here. I saw that in 1994. There was a bunch of sequels, and some of them I had not seen the second or the first one, so I was like, shit. There's no way I'm just going to dive into part 2 or 3 or 4 without watching some of the other ones first. So I wanted to open up. This is kind of a shame thing for me. I've seen Subspecies, of course. I've seen Vampire Journals, which is the 4th one, technically, out of the 5 or 6 of them they made. 6th one currently supposed to be made right now. I don't know if that's going to happen. But so there's the second one from 1992 or 3, I believe, called probably 3, Bloodstone, Subspecies 2. Now, I am not the hugest fan of the first Subspecies. I know I'm going to take a lot of shit for that because everybody's like, Dave, how can you not love Subspecies? I always said it's an average vampire movie, kind of a generic one with an amazing lead vampire in red. Angus Scrim is in it for 3.5 seconds, yada, yada, yada. But I always heard the sequels were much better, in particular 2 and 3. So part 2 opens up right where part 1 left off. And it opens up with Radu being revived by his little minions. And like they explain what happened in the first movie. Like he kind of all these dead bodies around the castle just to remind me that some crazy shit happened. So we have kind of the survivor of the first one. So Radu immediately wakes up and he takes care of his brother for good. And he's after the Bloodstone. So the girl who was previously kind of bit by Radu escapes with the Bloodstone. She's trying to survive. She calls her sister to come help her, and her sister comes to Romania. I believe it is in Romania where this movie takes place. And her sister gets involved with an American embassy officer and a local cop to try to figure out what the hell's going on against Radu. But Radu is not alone in this. He has his mother actually coming in, so it's a family affair. So we got to see Radu's whole family within the course of a couple movies. And his mother is one of the creepiest, most awesome full moon villain characters I've ever seen. She's basically a witch, but she's like done up like a skeleton with a missing eye, and she's like, eh. And there's literally one part where she commits a murder, and then like she runs at the camera like, and I was just like, this all day. I want this. This is all I want. This is all I ever wanted. But literally, I love that kind of stuff. I grew up on Full Moon, so this is a series that I really never dived into. I don't know why. Maybe it was one of those deals where I was like, can I rent Puppet Master? My mom looked at the case. She's like, okay, Puppet Master 3, and they're killing Nazis. That seems fine. Then she looked at Subspecies, and being like vampires and cheap movies, she probably figured there's a highly sexual content. And that is here to a certain extent. I mean, there's a little nudity, less nudity than one would expect. But essentially, it's just these people trying to figure out how to stop Radu, the girl's sister trying to figure out how to kind of convince the police and this embassy officer that Radu is real. So honestly, there's going to be some blurring of part 2 and 3 because they're direct sequels. They tie into each other directly. But I really enjoyed this one. I felt like it was a lot of fun. And I thought that the Radu is a really interesting character. So throughout the entire movie, he's trying to basically seduce this fledgling that he bit in the first movie to be part of him, and his mother is always fighting him on it and stuff like that. There's a lot of good interaction, but you know, Radu's after the Bloodstone. It's as simple as that. There's good gothic setting. The castle is awesome, and Radu kills people. Radu does what he do. Yeah. So, anyways, really cool stuff. Yeah, enjoyed the hell out of it. Much better than the first one for me. It's just a lot of fun. It's fast paced. It's good shit. So. Subspecies, or Bloodstone, Subspecies 2. Okay, so we're going to hop into those 1994 movies.
Prison officials say Dahmer's head may have been bashed against a wall.
A day of last-minute appeals failed to stop the execution of America's most notorious mass murderer, John Wayne Gacy.
Throughout, Chikatilo presented himself as a wretched victim of nature's indifference.
Satan approves.
Reality! What do you know about reality?
Handling CNN cable television has announced exclusive live.
It's not a Solitaire story. This is not reality. Not reality. Not reality.
This is reality.
Not reality.
The delusion of a disordered mind, a phantom, a spirit, a ghost.
Look, he hasn't got any relatives, and the coma he's in is irreversible. Give me a signature and I'll pull the plug now.
Fuck off.
And what follows Subspecies 2? Bloodstone Subspecies 2? but Bloodlust Subspecies 3. That's right. So let me show this off. Same case as the triple feature with all 3 of the Subspecies films in there. The first 3 at least in HD. And I will say that all 3 of them looked fairly good for full moon movies. I mean, and I don't mean that as an insult for full moon, because we know full moon, a lot of times they're very budgeted. But I think 2 and 3 are bigger budgeted than part 1 for sure. I feel like they could do more. So 3 picks up right where the second one left off. We have the sister and the embassy officer and the police officer all involved. And so you kind of like grown to like these characters, and it all comes to a head where it's essentially the same movie. 2 and 3 are the same movie. They carry on the story. I don't really know much difference, but my letterbox review of part 3 was creepy monsters licking out castle windows, and that's essentially the whole movie's vibe, because a lot of times they'll like the creatures will be watching people out the windows. You'll like see Radu up there looking scary as shit, remind you, because he has the long nasty fingernails and the scraggly hair and the pale face. He looks great. And then we have his mother, the witch, and she, like I said, is just like something out of an EC comic. She looks fucking fantastic. I should mention that this might be like the only full series, now that Scream 5 is directed by somebody else besides Wes Craven, that is directed by the same person. Like Ted Nicoletti, or however you say his name, directed all 5 of the Subspecies movies that were released, which is really awesome. Now the only one I need to watch is part 4. But yeah, so this one, it kills a lot of the characters, which kind of surprised me. There's a couple characters that kind of bit it that I was a little sad about. But yeah, so there's a really poignant line where Radu says, spoiler here, he says, "I killed my whole bloodline for you. I've killed everyone for you, my whole entire bloodline." So like, even as, he is this disgusting creature that's scary as shit, and he doesn't seem 100% necessarily your traditional vampire. He is kind of a hopeless romantic at the end of the day. But yeah, so there is a siege on the castle here. There's some, like I said, 2 and 3 are essentially the same film. They directly tie into each other, and this one leaves them open for more. I don't have all the details on these movies in my mind. I did not watch them like too long ago either. They just bleed together. I just was so happy, and it was so light. It was such easy watching material. Like if I had to watch one series in one day, it would probably be the Subspecies, just because they fly by, they all connect, they're easy to follow, and they're just like, as much as stuff doesn't seem like it's happening, people get killed here and there. There's a fair amount of sexuality and fun characters. It's a beautiful location. I mean, the monsters are cool. And yeah, that's all there is to kind of the Subspecies movies, but they deliver on the goods. And I love how Radu uses the shadows to kind of travel. That's a really nice touch. That's a really nice little thing where the shadows will go on the wall, and then all of a sudden he'll be behind you. Like that shit's really cool. And this one, the sister who is bit is actually like trying to learn from Radu. She actually seems to be kind of almost won over by him. And she's like, well, I want to learn how to be a vampire. So she's constantly pushing him for all that kind of stuff anyways. But anyways, just a lot of fun. These are really entertaining movies. I really recommend it. And especially for 1994, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that Full Moon was still putting out. Still good stuff too. Dark Angel, The Ascent was also from this year. Transfers 4 and 5, Lurking Fear. So they had a handful of good stuff out in 1994. So maybe Full Moon was king of the early 90s. I think so. It probably was. Okay, here we go. Another one from Saturn's Core. And this is one of my all-time favorite SOV movies by one of my top 50 horror directors. He made the list when we did it on 22 Shots of Moods in Horror. Eric Stanzi. This is Savage Harvest. Yeah, I have not watched this in forever. I think I had this bad boy on VHS and 2 different DVDs. Finally get a chance to retire it for this new Saturn's Core Blu-ray. Love it. I know. What are you guys doing with this SOV on Blu-ray? I don't give a shit anymore. I'm in 100%. So, I mean, they can clean up the sound and the picture as much as they can. But Eric Stanzi was a director, what was he? Salt Lake City, I want to say. I'm not 100% sure. Definitely independent regional filmmaker. And I think the only 2 movies he did before this would have been Scare Game and possibly The Fine Art, which were movies that I don't think that he doesn't really talk about anymore. But yeah, Eric Stanzi, a lot of these SOV guys, some of them went on to do other things. Some of them kind of just stopped making films, or they're working on other parts of films. But Stanzi had such an eye for camera work, even in SOV, that he went on to become kind of he works as a cinematographer. He did stuff like We Are What We Are, the remake, with that movie has good cinematography, and Tennessee Gothic, which was shot on film, great cinematography. So Stanzi the director of this film, went on to do some good cinematography work on some movies, and this stuff is good too, especially for an SOV, especially for one of the early movies. So as you kind of learn in the special features, like they have some ported over old ones, but they do have one new one. Stanzi said, I decided to make Savage Harvest because, I stopped like looking at film as a hobbyist, and I kind of started looking at this as like my first kind of professional movie, more seriously or something along those lines. And I looked at stuff that I enjoyed watching, like Evil Dead, and I figured maybe I can make something like that. So he brings like a lot of his same crew. His cast is a lot of memorable faces here. There's DJ Vavona, and the guy who was in the Killer in Scrapbook actually has a really fun role in here, and a couple other familiar people I noticed right away. So the plot is fairly simple. We open up with like the big flood that happened in the area, like in the actual news footage and everything like that. So that's kind of the opening to set the time and the place and all that kind of shit. So there's a group of friends that are going to help. I believe it's the main girl's uncle, one of the main girl's uncle and her and his wife are going to go help move some stuff out of this barn. He recently sold that part of the property, and the barn needs to be cleaned out and everything needs to be moved to the garage or to the garbage. So they show up, like 6 of them to clean everything up. And this property used to have like kind of a nice history to it. It has a nice Native American history, which the uncle kind of explains in a lot of exposition. There's like 2 or 3 moments of huge exposition dumps in here, and normally that's kind of a no-no, but the mythology is so rich and interesting in here and just creepy that I really loved it. They kind of explain, and there's not too many Native American horror stories that aren't completely like stereotypical crap. I mean, like where you have the, like Poltergeist 2, where Will Sampson's coming in like, oh yeah, and it's just like, it feels like stereotypical shit, or like a character from Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat. It's like, I'm the Native American character, watch me do all this Native American shit. Like, I mean, it doesn't actually, it has some of those like kind of tropes in any Native American horror-oriented movie, but it doesn't feel like one of these completely bullshit kind of storylines. So they explain this really cool story. Essentially, what happened is there was a shaman who sold out his tribe on accident. He felt horrible about it, so he started to communicate with this demon, and it kind of screwed over things. And he was banished, and they decided to kind of kill him because of something. They put him in this well. And what happened was there was like the crops all kind of went bad, and like this big explosion, this spring explosion, and like all the crops were bad, and in their place were these stones they had these emblems on there, and each emblem kind of represented a different demon. And there was like 8 or maybe 40 different demons, I think, or something along those lines. And the guy's explaining this, and he's passing around these rocks that were found on the property, and they're all touching these rocks and everything like that. And essentially what happens is, if there's the blood of the descendant of like the shaman that is on this property, anybody who touches that rock becomes possessed by the said demon on the rock. So there's this real cool Evil Dead type shit. They're trapped in this barrier, and some people are possessed by like a vulture or a snake or a boar. So there's all these different kind of fucking demons running around, and these people are trying to survive. So it's very much an Evil Dead storyline, but it's fairly graphic in the gore department. We have a smashed head, and there's this really great gag where one of the characters got the vulture demon. So every time somebody dies, they like sneak up and they just like eat the nasty corpse and shit like that. It's just a really nice touch about it. I thought it was quite effective, and although morbid, funny as hell. I like how they show what happens when you run into the barrier. Like, it gets creepy as shit. Like, it goes straight like 90s music video, but it makes perfect sense for this movie to have that kind of that style and everything. So it's just a gory, fun, fast-paced horror film. I do like the characters. One of the characters bites it, and I always forget that character bites it at that moment. I'm like, oh shit, I completely forgot that. Anyways, it's a very effective. The special effects are cool. The demons look awesome, and they have these nice little details, like the snake demon. He gets a nasty cut, and then he wipes off his skin. He sheds his skin to heal. That's just a nice little touch that a lot of movies wouldn't think about. You could tell that Eric Stanzi always puts in a lot of thought into what he does, and a lot of love too. But so as far as the special features are concerned, this is the new one. A quarter century since the harvest, new 2021 retrospective documentary. This is cool. This takes place at a drive-in at Mahoning, Pennsylvania, which I actually remember hearing about a bit. It was like a VHS fest where they show like 6 movies that are infamous for being on VHS. I would say they're all SOV, but they're not killing sprees there. So they kind of show like 6 movies that are infamous for being on SOV and everything like that. And Eric Stanzi is in there. Jason Kreese is in there, who directed the sequel, who's worked with with Eric Stange for years, so they talk a lot about it. There's some fans there at the convention. You see everybody getting all the shit signed. But then we also have Hell or High Water, the making of Savage Harvest, an archival 1994 doc, archival audio commentary with writer, director, producer Eric Stange and actor DJ Vavona, also producer, archival audio commentary with assistant producer Jessica Wyman and actors Ramona Midget and Rebecca Kenbeck, behind the scenes stills montage, archival of music videos directed by Eric Stange, 94 to 2000, Eric Stange and Wicked Pixel Trailer Vault. If you guys aren't familiar with Eric Stange, I did an old retrospective years ago of his movies where I covered most of his movies up to that point, but he's still making movies to this day, and his films get better as far as technical aspects. I've always liked all his movies for the most part, but stuff like Savage Harvest, Ice from the Sun, these movies are pretty, groundbreaking for low-budget films, I would say, especially Ice from the Sun. That's some good stuff. But like his newer films are very good too. In Memory of, Deadwood Park, Ratline. They're all interesting. They're all good, solid films. He even goes to the extreme side with stuff like Scrapbook. I mean, I don't know how many people can watch Scrapbook and be fine with it. It's pretty fucked up stuff, man. But anyways, he's just a very prolific indie director and one of my personal favorites when it comes to these kind of indie guys. Just do it yourself and everything like that. So Savage Harvest from Saturn's Core is definitely a welcomed addition to the collection. And I look forward to more Saturn's Core stuff. I love Shatter Dead they put out. I love their Mail Order Murder doc. Savage Harvest is great. They're putting out Sinister, which is another 94 SOV movie that I'm going to have to check out, which I had on the old Sub Rosa DVD but never watched. So yeah, anyways, I need to definitely push them, or we need to push them, because I have no power to release Ice from the Sun on Blu-ray, because I think that was shot on film. I'd love to see Ice from the Sun. People, we need that on Blu-ray. That's definitely a hidden treasure indie movie. So I maybe, and the people who know about it like it, I think, or know of it, have been intrigued by it. But I'd never heard anyone bring it up, to be honest, anymore. But anyways, Savage Harvest, great stuff. Okay, the next 1994 SOV movie from Saturn's Core I'm going to cover is Psycho Sisters. Now, this is a Wave production, Gary Whitson's production that Mail Order Murder covered. And this is actually directed by, what was the director's name here? Jacoby or Jasaloni or Giacalone, Pete Giacalone, I'm not 100% sure. This movie in 1994, he remade it in 1998, but there was a short version of this movie as well. So, Psycho Sisters. It stars a lot of familiar Wave production actresses. The one that I know most in here is Tina Kraus, because she kind of moved on to some other things too, like Bloodletting and whatnot. But, so, Wave Productions film. So, Psycho Sisters. This is a little long for what it is, I will admit. But in the very beginning, there is kind of these three sisters, and they kind of explain who they are. We have the older one, who's the protective one, the middle one, who's kind of like semi-protective, but more fun-loving, and then Tina Kraus, who's the youngest one, who's the most fun-loving, yada, yada, yada. So, in the beginning of the film, there is a couple goons led by Jack. Yeah, and they end up breaking in the house, tying up all the girls in their underwear, and they rape Tina Kraus pretty brutally. Actually, it's the most brutal, graphic scene in the entire film. Even though a lot of it's clothed, I think most of it's a clothed rape scene. It's probably the most. I mean, it looks like they did remove the clothes, like at one point, as far as the characters are concerned, but they don't really show that much. And it's probably the most brutal graphic scene in the entire film. So I was like, oh, it went a little bit further than I expected. If you guys aren't familiar with Wave Productions, this one's a little different though. I know that like people would write in and then like, we want this movie made, and they'd send it back a quote how much it's going to cost, and then they do it. This one feels like it's a little different, as the director kind of approached them, or they approached him, whatever. So he had this idea and wanted to make this. Anyways, So after that, Tina Kraus actually dies, and the girls, the other two sisters, kind of escape. The bad guys get away, and there's like this long scene of them running in the woods in their underwear, which obviously seems like a little fetish stuff. And they decide to take revenge after they get released from the mental hospital on men, all men. So they decide to start chopping off their, you know what, and putting them in jars and keeping them everywhere. And they write on the jars stupid shit like dumb jock and stuff like that on the jars. It becomes kind of comical. It becomes very comical, honestly. There's some silly stuff in here which is enjoyable. A couple of the people they pick up, they're just these long scenes of like the women strangling the men, like to the point where it almost felt like a fetish film in that way, because I know that a lot of these fetish films are made where the women are strangled and everything like that. There was a whole slew of those, but it almost seems like somebody was was like, well, I want to make a fetish film about men being strangled. Almost like it's like somebody's fetish is men being strangled by women. And there's a lot of that. There's a lot of guys in their underwear, girls in underwear strangling men and shit like that. It's almost like half the fucking movie, to be honest. But it does run a little long. It's not as graphic as one would expect, besides that opening rape scene. And yeah, so there's some funny dialogue. There's not really any nudity, which is kind of surprising. You would expect it. There's some hilarious, like I guess often on accidental humor. Like there's these two guys they pick up that are complete assholes, and they're just like talking to themselves like, I can't wait to get laid. Yeah, man, this is awesome. It's just like shit like that, and you're just like, what the fuck ever. I mean, it's not the worst thing I've ever seen. It is entertaining. I did enjoy myself, but I am intrigued to watch the 98 version. It looks like it takes itself a little bit more seriously, probably a little bit more money behind it. I mean, like, this movie is dirt cheap. Dirt cheap. I love Tina Kraus. I mean, like, she's super attractive and has a lot of fun screen presence. And I do like the Psycho Sisters as a whole, and their name cracks me up. It's like Psycho, spelled Sincole, the Cynical Sisters or whatever. It's fucking funny. So, new transfer from original SVHS Edit Master, original Psycho Sisters demo video created by Wave Productions. So, that's what they did. They sent in, they made that, and then they made a feature after that. Vintage 1995 After with the director Pete. Wave Splatter Chatter video magazine featuring footage and interviews from 1995 theatrical premiere at the William Peterson College. Oh shit. Psycho Sisters at Chiller vintage interviews with 1995 Chiller Theater Expo. The Day the Shopping Carts Came to Life, an early short film by the director. Lost Child, an early short film by the director, an original teaser trailer. And just so you guys know, this feature was shot and edited on video. Please be advised that transfer quality is confined by the limitations of the format. It is region free, and there's subtitles. So if you got to see the Psycho Sisters cut off some dicks, then this is for you for sure. So yeah, I was entertained by it, but don't expect it to make my top 10 list. Okay, the next one is French film, actually starring Gerard Depardieu, I think. And this might be the first movie I ever covered of his. 1994, kind of strange French movie called The Machine, or La Machine. Yeah, so this one I had not heard much about, but it's definitely a weird body swapping movie. In a sense, it reminded me a bit of The Jacket or Face Off or something along those lines. I don't know. When did Face Off come out? I feel like it came out after 94, maybe like 96, 98, somewhere around there. So essentially what happens here is Gerard Depardieu works in this hospital. He is like, I don't even know exactly his degree, but he's interested in this machine he's created, and he starts to like kind of be hyper focused on this serial killer, spree killer or sorts, who basically went out and he stabbed like 4 women, and like one day he had a mental break and he started stabbing women, and he ended up here. So he becomes intrigued by him, and the machine he's working on can switch like consciousness with someone for a short amount of time. So he wants to kind of use him as an experiment. This movie does do the thing where structurally it opens up with something that grabs you in, like this crazy thing, and then it's like 18 months earlier. So you're like, oh, how are we going to get to that point? You know, typical kind of structure here. So essentially what happens is he does decide to take this spree killer in to do the switch. Not very smart. He's also having these marital problems. He has somebody on the side. All that's going on as well to complicate matters, right? So he takes this person and they do the switch, but of course it's not temporary. It happens, and he's stuck like that. Of course, there's a car accident on the way back. And the killer kind of takes control, and he being looking like Gerard Depardieu, he basically essentially kind of infiltrates his family, tells everyone this guy's crazy. But of course, the doctor in the killer's body is not going to have that, so he escapes, and it complicates things. So it's a big cat and mouse where, of course, the doctor as a killer knows everything, and the killer is not very. He's dim-witted, and he's trying to interact with the family, but he's obviously fucked up. He has these psychological problems, and he can't really communicate well, and he doesn't know all the details. So it adds a lot of suspense and interesting things how they're going to unfold. Gerard Depardieu gets to play, I don't want to spoil everything, but he gets to play at least 2 roles in this film, which is cool to see that, as does the other actor. So yeah, this one ends up getting really dark, and the concept at the very end is just kind of twisted and fucked up, but I thought it worked really well. Yeah, the moments of violence are fairly effective. The acting is really well done. The concept is crazy. Yeah, I thought this was a fairly good slasher sci-fi horror film. I would recommend checking it out. The acting is carries the film really well, and I thought the psychological stuff with the killer was really well done. And the stuff he says, I love that. Like, they notice his dialogue changing and stuff. He starts calling his kid a rat boy, and they're like, rat boy, what are you doing? He starts getting more violent towards his son and more, sexual advances towards his wife, which he didn't have. So yeah, it's a good film. I would recommend checking this one out. It was a nice little surprise, honestly. Didn't know what to expect, but it's good film for sure. A little different for 94. I think, is it the first French one I've watched so far? I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, good stuff. Okay, so the next one from 1994 is actually directed by Paul Schrader. Yeah, Paul Schrader, who directed Blue Collar, First Reform, tons of movies. He also he directed Cat People, the 1982 remake, and he also wrote Taxi Driver, one of the greatest films of all time. But this one is from 1994, and this is a sequel to Cast a Deadly Spell from 1991, starring Fred Ward as H.P. Lovecraft, a detective. This takes place in the 50s, but of course it's in an alternate universe where everybody uses magic. Dennis Hopper takes over the character of H.P. Lovecraft. Dennis Hopper, I love. This is a beat-up VHS, as you can tell. HBO one here. Old. But I'm a big fan of Dennis Hopper. Who isn't? I also love the original Cast of Deadly Spell from 1991. It made my top 3 of the year when we did that as a retro year. So, big fan of it. So, the thing about... Witch Hunt is that's a very good name for the movie too, because this one definitely incorporates magic being in the 50s, and instead of like them hunting these communist actors, it's kind of the witchcraft, or anybody who uses magic is all of a sudden going to be outed as kind of like, let's say, communism. McCarthyism is essentially what happens here. So, what happens is there is a murder that Dennis Hopper is hired by a woman, an actress, to kind of follow her husband around because she believes he's cheating. Of course, there's a murder that ensues. The husband is killed, and to kind of get the heat off her, he starts to investigate and everything. The thing is, Lovecraft in this movie doesn't use magic. He's one of the only people that doesn't use magic in his craft. Basically the person he shares an office with next to him is like a big time magic practitioner. They're friends. They kind of help each other out. That deal. But so this one, what it didn't have, what Cast a Deadly Spell had, was Cast a Deadly Spell had amazing special effects. It had amazing practical effects where you got to see gremlins and werewolves and zombies. It was just a lot of fun, and the cast was a little bit better, surprisingly, even though this movie has Dennis Hopper, Eric Bogosian, Julian Sands. So it has a nice solid cast in here. It just can't really compete with Fred Ward, Charles Holohan, David Warner, Clancy Brown, Julianne Moore. I know they're comparable cast, right? But I think that the cast in Cast of Deadly Spell is richer. I think the budget was bigger. I think that they were able to do more. Well, Paul Schrader is kind of looking at this to make a statement on how silly Hollywood is, kind of digging in, because it takes place in Hollywood, digging in, taking and pulling all these people magic out that everyone uses magic, yada yada. He's making a good statement, and with the backdrop of the 50s and Leave It to Beaver life and everything like that, it's clever. It is clever. Dennis Hopper is good in the movie. Eric Bogosian's great. He's always great. He plays this politician that is kind of fronting this witch hunt, if you will, to kind of pull all these magic users out and blame them for everything that's going wrong with the world. Just typical politician shit, kind of pointing out something that's new or something that, our people are doing and saying, well, I want to bring back the old ways and the class, all that kind of shit. That's, a lot of politicians work like that. But yeah, Julian Sands is kind of the evil magician baddie. But some good gags in this movie is like they bring back William Shakespeare. They bring him back to help write Hollywood movies. That's very fun. You see Mark Twain in the background, shit like that. So there's a lot of nice little clever, funny touches. Dennis Hopper can do anything, and I'll enjoy watching him. You get a little bit more backstory on his character, why he doesn't use magic. I don't remember if that was ever explained in the first film. The showdown between the two baddies, Dennis Hopper and the main baddie, is all right. It just doesn't pack the stakes that the first movie packed. It doesn't pack the special effects the first movie packed. So I feel like this movie probably got shit on just because it's not the same thing as the first movie. And I don't typically hold that against movies. Hell, I like Chud too. And that's nothing like the first movie. This movie's fine. It's completely entertaining. I had no real problems with it. It has some cuteness, has some funniness. It's just, they have a lot of cool ideas, and the concepts and everything could get much bigger. And they kind of kind of don't explore them as much as they should. I mean, it's hyper focused in some ways, like, and that's kind of good because you can open a door to explore all these different things, but you might be leaving like a bunch of like plot holes or shit open. It kind of just focuses on a couple of things, and I like that. Maybe if we had more movies or a sequel to this to explore it more, it would have been a little bit better regarded. For the most part, it's okay. I was entertained by it, but I would put the first one more as a horror film than this one too. This one is more like a fantasy. Like, it is film noir, of course. You get the private eye looking into the case and everything. But yeah, it's a fine film. It's not great. It's just decent. It's kind of strange that Paul Schrader directed it, but he did put some interesting touches in here as well. So it's all right. That is Witch Hunt. Okay, the next one from 1994 is Hellbound, starring everybody's favorite action star, Chuck Norris. I'm just kidding. Chuck Norris is far from my favorite action star, if you guys haven't noticed. I'm not the hugest Chuck Norris fan, okay? I do like some of his movies like Delta Force and everything like that. There's a handful of them, okay? So this is actually directed by Aaron Norris, his brother. And it feels like there was a lot of this going on in the 90s where it's like, I'm an ancient demon, I'm coming back, and I need to collect these things to rule the earth. Another movie that came out this year, Throne of Hell from Mexico, has kind of a similar thing where somebody's possessed and they need some ancient ancient fucking artifact to rule the world. Yada, yada, yada. This time is this weird demon with the slick back hair. He's in stuff like Bloodstone. He's in a couple other movies. He's the villain in Bloodstone, not the Subspecies one. Another one, a South African film I reviewed probably 6-7 months ago, whatever. He's in that film. But essentially the movie opens up with this medieval times and these knights stopping this evil, like, demonic guy from having this scepter and taking over the world. They kill a bunch of demons. It's a really cool, awesome scene. Very entertaining. I was like, we're in for something really fun. First 20 minutes or so, and then we kind of get into modern days. And we realize that there's a bunch of murders taking place, and this balding guy with the slick back hair is coming through, and he's trying to collect all these pieces of the broken scepter. Obviously, we know who it is. This brings in some Chicago cops. I believe there's some Chicago, Chuck Norris and his partner, who both don't have regulation haircuts to be police officers at that time, I imagine. So that's a nitpick. Who gives a shit? So anyways, these guys... they start to look into the case, and they end up having to go to another country to dive deeper into it and follow the trail of murders that are leading to this evil demon. Yeah, so that's essentially the film. When they get to, I can't remember which country they're in 100%. They'll probably say on the back. I know I'm a shitty reviewer. I just watched this movie today, so it's just like, I am a dum-dum. Anyways, they get to this country, and there's a lot of these silly comedic beats where, like, there's a kid pickpocket that keeps stealing Chuck Norris's partner's wallet, and they play these silly music throughout the entire movie every time they're walking the streets. It's kind of silly. And the partner's always like, we're missing the bowls, man. I'm hungry. We gotta eat. It's not great. It's not horrible. It's typical buddy cop shit, all right? Chuck Norris isn't horrible in this movie. I mean, he does the best he can. I mean, the material's not great. I mean, the opening's fun. The last 20 minutes is fun. But there's a huge lull in the middle where kind of he's collecting the pieces. And although there is some murders here and there, which are fine, it doesn't really, it just doesn't, it kind of lost me, to be honest. I was kind of bored throughout the middle act of this film for sure. The final fight scene between the demon and Chuck Norris is decent. I enjoyed watching that. Yeah, anyways, it's very standard 90s action horror stuff. It kind of reminded me of I Come in Peace, just not as well done or something along those lines, or even Split Second, but I don't know if it's in the lines with Split Second. A lot of people love Split Second. I probably would put Split Second above this just by a little bit. Anyways, not a huge fan of this one. I remember seeing the cover for years, and I don't remember if I ever did watch it. I feel like I probably did at one point, but it's just, it has some moments. It just doesn't really deliver. The action at the end is decent. I mean, Chuck Norris kicks... Well, I mean, he beats the shit out of people pretty good. It's kind of what he does. The surround sound, I mean, it's just a 2-point mix, but it sounded pretty good. Like, I mean, the thuds and the punches and the kicks, they land pretty hard. They're effective. So give it a good sound mix on that. So that is Hellbound. The next 1994 movie is Ceremony. by Joe Castro. This is a VHS, of course. York Entertainment. Remember York? I mean, they released a lot of like cheap movies. I feel like they released Sukkubus back in the day. I think that's where I originally saw it. But Joe Castro directed a lot of low-budget movies. I don't know if I've ever covered any of his stuff on here, to be honest. So, 1994. This is one of these movies that like has a trailer right in the beginning that spoils everything. I was like, come on, what the fuck? But yeah, so this is a very short movie, about an hour and 15, 16 minutes, to be honest. And it's fairly straightforward. What we have here is they kind of explain the situation. There was an angel that was cast out of heaven, not Lucifer, but this angel was cast out of heaven because they're jealous of Jesus. Basically, when they landed on Earth, it made it easy for Satan to come in and basically corrupt this angel. So this angel was imprisoned in this weird instrument for 100 years, or whatever. I don't remember the exact time. It can't be 100 years, but this weird instrument, and it's up to this family to watch this instrument. And at midnight tonight, this thing is supposed to open, and this demon is supposed to be able to wander around. They have to make sure this demon stays preserved in this candlelit area and get them back in the box. That's kind of the plot. Forrest Ackerman is in here. Forrest Ackerman has a role, has been kind of small little role in the beginning and the end of the movie, from Famous Monsters, of course. So essentially, this woman is kind of like going to college. The daughter of Forrest Ackerman is going to college, and she basically asked anyone who's interested in religion or theology or anything like that to show up to her house to kind of witness this kind of spectacle. She's basically told you should do this by herself. So everybody shows up and they're waiting around for this weird event to happen. The theology teacher is kind of an asshole, to be honest. He's kind of a jerk. He says he's religious, but we have our doubts. Anyways, what happens is about 12 o'clock, which the movie I told you is about an hour and 15 minutes. We hit about 40 minutes into this fucking thing. We're 40 minutes into this thing and we finally get to midnight. And of course, the demon shows up. The candles get knocked down. A couple people get killed. Everybody walks around this big dark house with candles trying to get the demon back in the thing. A couple moments are cool, like the devil special effect in the beginning was really cool. There's an exploding head that is solid. There's some blood that flies, a big pile of blood that flies and hits somebody that's wearing all white. That looks really nice. But actually the murders when we get to the house are non-existent. I mean, there's one with a snake that's kind of cool, but they're not existent. They're not gory special effects or anything like that. The demon makeup stuff looks cool. I thought that was cool. And that the idea that the demon actually is naked at one point and has the makeup, naked monsters, that's really cool. Love that kind of shit. But the very end is anticlimactic, and it's like, for what? What kind of stakes? And then there's a little stinger at the very end where you're like, okay, come on. That might be some of the coolest imagery in the movie. The sound design is not great. Like, just one point this character, Joe, screams, and you could tell they reused the scream like 5 or 6 times, and it's just one of those things like, oh, and you're just like, fuck off. But I can understand that shit. Sometimes you don't get the coverage. Whatever. I don't care about that. I'm not going to hold the movie complete, like take points off for that or something like that. But the movie, for the most part, is a little lackluster. It is very low budget. The makeup effects are good, but there's not really any gore effects except the couple that I mentioned, the exploding head and the gore that flies there. It could have been a lot better. I know it's a low budget movie, probably made very early in his career. I don't remember exactly when Joe Castro got started, but it's okay. It's not great. I wouldn't give it a recommend. I don't love it personally, but there's a couple bits in there that are nice. It's religious horror, so if you're into that, you're into low budget religious horror, maybe give it a spin. But Ceremony wasn't necessarily my cup of tea. Okay, the last one from 1994 is going to be The Childhood Friend. This is an Italian film. This is actually directed by Pupi Avati, who I think it's the same guy. If I'm not mistaken, I believe Pupi Avati is the guy who did Zetter, aka Revenge of the Dead. So he did a couple movies, and I can't ever remember if he's the same guy who did House with Laughing Windows or not. So correct me if I'm wrong. Anyways, 1994. This is more of a thriller kind of film, but it's an interesting one nonetheless. I enjoyed this one quite a bit. Doesn't have too good of reviews. I didn't really know what to expect when I watched this. Like I didn't when I looked it up, I was like, I liked it. I don't know how other people are going to feel about it. So what we have here is this new talk show host. He recently, a friend of his committed suicide for some kind of like fucked up reasons or involving the studio or whatever, and he gets his position. So he immediately takes over the position, and he has these high profile guests that he comes on, and he has dirt on him, and he kind of basically interviews them like an asshole just to make himself look better and also tear them down. And he becomes like a man of the people. He's very popular amongst the people because he's kind of outing all these politicians or these rich businessmen and just making them look like assholes that they probably are. So, and bringing up all the dirt and stuff and ruining their reputations. at the same time, there is a man who's going through some real tragic stuff. His wife recently died, and he's ready to commit suicide. But the television's on in the background, and he hears a familiar voice, and he realizes the guy in the television is someone he once knew. And instead of killing himself, he kind of starts to write to him, and he wants him to reveal a horrible secret that happened in their past. So we kind of have that cat and mouse stuff. But this news guy, he doesn't really necessarily believe it's a friend from his past, and we don't know 100% if it is or not, or if this person's just crazy. So he starts to dig into the past and everything like that and look into it, and we have the reveal of what actually happened, and it's really fucked up and twisted. And we have a nice touch where this guy is holding the camera. He has like a home camera, and he's explaining everything that happened, and that comes into the very end, and I thought was a nice touch. But essentially, some people are murdered, there's some suspense, and he has to have some bunch of family drama. For the most part, I thought this was a well-done movie. I thought it was kept me intrigued. A suspenseful movie, well acted, well put together. And also, there's some truth to it. The people that want to, kind of point out the flaws in everyone else aren't clean either. Everybody's got skeletons in the closet. That doesn't mean that, you should let bad guys walk free because you did something bad that's not even nearly as bad as what they're doing. But still, not a lot of people that are the first to point the finger or the first to, bring people down also have done some awful things. And before you accuse someone else, you better take a look at yourself, right? Well, how's that stupid line go? Anyways, I thought this was well done and well acted, and like I said, more in the lines of a thriller film, but good performance from the actual the supposed kind of the crazy person, the stalker. I thought he did really good, and I thought the cops were good. There was one cop in here that I really liked, and I liked his line of questioning at one point. He's like, "Why didn't you say something there?" It's just like, I feel where this guy's coming from at this point, the detective. Anyways, this is a good one. I would recommend checking it out if you're into thrillers or you like this director, because I believe it's all the same guy. I mean, he kind of seems like semi-underrated director, to be honest. So yeah, anyways, good stuff. Childhood friend. Okay, so this next pick was a you ain't seen, and it was my pick for you. And being the jerk that I am, I kept picking 1994 movies because 2 birds, 1 stone.
I know.
That's what I do. But hey, I think you enjoyed this one. I picked John Waters' Serial Mom from obviously 1994, starring Kathleen Turner, Sam Waterston, Matthew Lillard, Ricky Lake. Who else is in there? I know there's got to be a couple more cameos of kind of like famous actors or whatnot, because John Waters always... Mink Stoll is in there as well. That's a John Waters regular. John Waters, obviously very infamous cult director. Pink Flamingos, which we covered. Desperate Living. We did, Multiple Maniacs, which I covered on here for 1970. Yeah, so this is like a weird kind of, I don't want to say parody, but it's a comedy thriller serial killer movie, but it's fucking hilarious, which is funny because I watched Witch Hunt. Remember the Dennis Hopper sequel to Cast a Deadly Spell from 94, and in the opening had that Leave It to Beaver kind of parody quality, and then they went into the Carthunism magic shit. But that was a sequel to Cast a Deadly Spell. This one also had the Leave It to Beaver kind of style thing, which is the 90s is kind of almost making fun of a lot of the TV shit from, is it the 50s or 60s? I'm not 100%. When I used to watch Leave It to Beaver and stuff, and like the Andy Griffith Show on TV when I was a kid.
Like that stuff was on, and you think of it, this is like early 90s.
Yeah,
so 94. So I mean, don't they say like the nostalgia cycle is 20 years?
Okay, so I mean, but there are reruns on all the time. Yeah. So anyways, the plot basically follows. There's seemingly a perfect little community. Kathleen Turner is like the perfect mom with the perfect husband and the perfect 2 kids, kind of. Ricky Lake is always worried about her weight and falling in love with absolutely every guy that comes in the house. Matthew Lillard is a horror-obsessed fan who regularly fucking talks about, has like posters of Herschel Gordon Lewis in the background and other things like that, and works at a video store. He has a best friend that always comes over, and she's like a horror chick too. And then Kathleen Turner has a dark secret. She is doing horrible things, and I think we actually do get to see the start of her murders, because there's no real crimes beforehand, but there does seem to be some sort of like crimes, like kind of degenerate behavior where like she's very polite, but then she calls and prank phone calls a neighbor to drive her mad, to make her gaslights her into insanity.
They're like social transgressions. Is that what social trespasses? What's the word I'm thinking of? But they're like very minor. Like the inciting incident is literally like
she's very petty. She's a sociopath.
Yeah, her neighbor cuts her off and takes a parking spot at Joanne
But we
Fabrics.
don't know that. But we know that she's calling her and driving her crazy. And then
we don't know
Then
that
we
at
get
first.
a flashback
Yeah.
at first. It's very funny, very hilarious. And I just absolutely love how they paint this picture. And the murders... They can't. I know, like, people will be like, I don't know if there's a horror movie, but the murders kind of carry out almost like a latter-day Child's Play sequel, where they're almost really ridiculous and goofy, but elaborate somewhat. Like, they take a long time. So, like I said, she starts to kill people off in the small town, and the whole entire family starts to catch on that she may be serial mom. And it's like a big fiasco. The police are following her, and it leads to so many hilarious moments. She becomes like kind of a punk culture icon to people. And it mixes in like all the stuff you think John Waters loves, like horror movies, the kind of true crime fascination he has, because he always would write like letters to like serial killers and stuff, or people that were in major crimes. He was actually friends with one of the people Manson family girls, the Leslie Van Houten, who was only there and stabbed a body. He always was like kind of hoping that she would get released and stuff like that. Always correspond, and he was obsessed with like Jerry Brudos, who was a serial killer. I want to say 50s, 60s, where I feel like this aesthetic would kind of a fit. So like he has that weird sense of like comedy, but also the obvious macabre underneath the surface, like kind of like a comedic version of Blue Velvet almost.
I'd say that, like this is very similar to like something like Blue Velvet. Also, I get like huge Heather vibes from it.
Yeah.
Just kind of like that 50s, just cheeky suburb life, and just like literally like thinner than paper, like how quick everything falls to shit. But the comedy as well. I feel like its tone is very similar to Heather's. So I mean, I was like just automatically drawn to it.
It has all the zany characters like in a John Waters movie, and like they're just so weird and goofy. Like they're absolutely hilarious. And he has that like dark, sick sense of humor. So like Serial Mom there's a big court case, and like one of the victim's brothers goes to attack Matthew Lillard because he's on the phone talking about possibly a movie or something where Suzanne Summers is gonna play her from Three's Company.
And then Suzanne Summers shows up.
Yeah. But he's arguing and he says, wait, man, have you got TV rights yet? And he stops. And it goes to show you just how like everybody is like obsessed with murder and the macabre stuff. The police officers in this movie are great.
Yes.
The one guy we said reminded us kind of like Chris Penn, but he's really funny in it. And he's just like, beware, she's armed and she's fucking crazy. It's fucking crazy. The dialogue's great. I love all the shout outs and the pettiness and the way that people are murdered are so over the top. Somebody's beat to death with a fucking leg of lamb. I had seen this before. I think I caught this on television, and I remember just kind of having a fun quirkiness about it. But as an adult, it's just way more better. And you can't wear fucking white shoes after Labor Day.
No, they changed that. That's not a rule anymore.
I love it so much, and it's true. Like it's so funny that she walks, and she's obviously guilty just because like she completely destroys the witnesses. Chicks with dicks. The garbage men, the recycling men are so perfect. I love the scene where she gets them on her side. She brings them out a bottle of booze, which is something that I shouldn't say this. Like my grandpa would kind of, and my dad would kind of do that kind of shit where they drop off a load of concrete at a certain place and, give the guy a case of beer. So next time you do the drop off the concrete, just drop this one off for free. Or here's, you know what I mean? So, or they get you in there first. I know it's just like, grease the wheels. You got to grease the wheels. I'm telling you, like, it doesn't matter. They're all dead anyways. So they're not going to get in trouble. So, anyways, I just love that she goes and gives these guys a bottle of booze, and then she's like, they don't recycle. That lady with the one neighbor is so funny with
I love
the two different color eyes.
Yeah, I wish I knew who she was because I think she's fantastic, and she's probably like the strongest of the side characters. I'd say. Like she's like most prominent. She's in several scenes, and she's just fun. Ming Sol is fantastic for what little she has, but I just really like her, especially when she loses her shit.
In court.
Especially in the court.
She gets sentenced to time. No, it's just a brilliant movie, and like the way they paint this town, it's just full of quirky, weird characters. The deaths are good. There's more kills than you would expect.
Yeah.
Like the first there's a couple, and you're like, okay, but then it starts to pile up, and like the weirdness qualities about it almost hit to a point where it reminded me of Mommy, which is like the semi-sequel to The Bad Seed, where Patty McCormick plays like an overprotective mother and starts killing people, and it's not exactly like like in your face comedy, but it has a certain element of comedy and self-awareness. And I think Serial Mom is like the next ridiculous step in that.
Yeah, I would say. I mean, I don't know what Mommy is, but
Yeah.
Like I said, to me, it's hand in hand with Heather's, like in terms of its tone and delivery. And even really the subject matter. Oh, is it in here?
It is in here.
Whoa.
This is John Stanley's creature features because, Kathleen Turner is a creature feature, apparently. Oh, she's amazing in this movie.
Yeah, she is fantastic.
Her voice is perfect. She's perfectly cast.
I like the way she looks.
I love that when she's chasing people, she's, like, very, like, perfectly built to where she's, like, very motherly but very scary and strong and shit.
She has, like, a Michael Myers thing at the same time where it's more like a brisk walking rather than, like running. She's like walking with intent in some scenes.
Got a knife. So okay, this is John Stanley's creature feature. Serial Mom, 1994, 3 out of 5.
Okay.
A very amusing satire from writer-director John Waters as he pokes fun at murder in America and how it turns some individuals into media stars. At the core of this movie's success is Kathleen Turner as a sparkling, happy mother and housewife who seems to stand for grand family traditions until someone insults those sensitivities and transforms her into a raving murderess who kills with her car, a knife, a leg of roast, a spear, and other objects just lying about the house. Turner commits all this mayhem with a smile, and smiles are what you'll have when the trail portion adds to and enhances Waters' amusingly blunt take on American justice. The excellent cast includes Ricky Lake as the daughter, Sam Waterston as the husband, Matthew Lillard, Mary Jo Catlett, Patricia Dunnock, Justin Whalen, Patricia Hearst, and Suzanne Summers as herself, signed to do the TV miniseries version. Personally, I've got to give this 4.5 to 9.5, almost a perfect. I just was so happy with it. I was laughing hysterically. It's a movie that I'll constantly quote, and it had been years since I seen it. I just remembered I really liked it, and I was like, this is definitely something that you would like.
Oh yeah, I enjoyed it. If Heather's is a 5-star movie, this is like a 4.98.
It's very close, right?
Yeah, it's very close.
And that's a first time watch for you. So I mean, these
yeah.
build up over time. Like I said, it's just perfect. And for people like that's not necessarily a horror movie. It's like, well, motherfuckers are trying to put The Crow as a horror movie from '94. Serial Mom is much more a horror movie than The Crow.
I mean, it ain't any less scary than Child's Play, and Child's Play is considered horror. Is it a tone thing? Because Child's Play's tones all over the place.
Not one, but the sequels start to get all
sequels
over the place.
What is horror?
I mean, it's all up to yourself. Like,
right.
Is it something horror enough to include for you personally or not? It's all up to you.
I would say it's horror. I mean, it's got killing in it.
It's not the first genre.
Right.
Comedy is the first genre.
Right, but, yeah, I mean, it's there to make you laugh and not so much to scare you, but, I mean, I don't find horror to be particularly scary in the first place, and usually, like, if I'm not going to get scared, then I'm probably just going to laugh, so horror is just an extension of comedy.
Some of the only movies that really kind of scare me are almost less, like, found footage to a certain extent. Only mystery found footage. Like Snorai can creep me out. Stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Real fucked up shit too. Like Martyrs will bother me. Just stuff like that. But like for the most part, when we're talking like Child's Play 3, it's a comedy first.
Yeah, I mean, like
this tone I think would be similar to like a Child's Play 3, except much better.
Just yeah, unless Bradley Dorff or whatever his name is. Brad Dorff. Who isn't bad by any means.
He's great. He's great. He's one of the best.
Yeah.
He's the best at that kind of shit.
But yeah, I guess it just depends what people consider horror to be. I think my definition's, rather loose.
It just doesn't really matter, to be honest.
Yeah, it don't matter. It is what I say it is. And
you can
I'm going to talk about it.
The only way it matters is if you're making a combined list with people. You all have to agree on certain titles. But if it's your list, you can fucking put whatever you want on there.
We have a combined list, and I put whatever I want on there.
We don't have a combined list. What are we doing next week?
Well, here's the thing.
We're not doing that one thing.
What? No, we won't do that because I didn't order it yet.
Doing it ever.
We are going to do... Shoot, I didn't even think of what I wanted. I do have Arcadia of My Youth, but I don't know if you want to do 2 anime in a week period, or in a 2-week period, or however this works out. Because I didn't really give it any forethought. I mean, I guess we could do it for Universal, but, I hate that I'm taking all my Universal picks, or I'm throwing all my picks in the trash.
You should have fucking...
No, you should have given me time to think about what I wanted.
I told you. It's your fucking turn. Isn't it Hunchback? I think a Hunchback's
No, I'm not doing Hunchback. We'll do Arcadia of My Youth.
No!
Yeah, we have to.
Is it a TV series?
No, it's a This is actually a standalone movie, but it is an anime.
How long is it?
In like that 2-hour range. You want to do War and Peace? Because we'll do War and Peace.
If you do War and Peace, we're doing The Shining the week, and then I'm fucking throwing Stephen King all day.
We're not
doing
doing
the fucking
Stephen King.
Salem's Lot.
I will actually perish.
I will not. That's how I feel about War and Peace. However you feel about Stephen King, I feel tenfold about Russian fucking stuff.
You see, my list is just no Stephen King because I just can't do it. I don't like.
And mine's
the
no
man.
Russian 2-hour, 4-hour, 6-hour bullshit.
I can't do the Russian 2, 4, 6-hour bullshit. I can't do the overly long animated movies. I can't.
I'll do the animated movies.
Porn movie.
We're not doing the animated porn movie. We're doing the animated movies. I'm not doing the Russian shit, and we're not doing any Russian animated porn movies either.
Damn, that was next on the list.
I
Okay.
know. I don't care how much Vladimir Putin likes it. We ain't doing it. I don't know what that
That's going to get
means.
you demonetized or whatever.
What's that?
It's like you know.
Was that the sickle?
No, when you.
Is that a cut?
No, it's like you're, you know.
I don't know what that is. What is that, the Iron Curtain?
Yeah, it's the Iron Curtain. There we go.
We're done. We're out
Bye.
of here. Okay, let's get into these questions, comments, concerns, all that stuff. So last week I asked you guys your favorite Shaw Brothers movie, which I believe I asked already. So The Maniac, King Boxer, and the 36th Chamber of Shaolin are my favorite Shaw Brothers movies. I know it's not Shaw Brothers, but what are your thoughts on The Master of the Flying Guillotine? I asked because this is the first Kung Fu flick I've ever seen. I actually don't believe I've seen that one. The title is very familiar. I've heard it referenced before, but I never got a chance to see it. Milo169, enjoyed the return of Unhinged Dave on 22 Shots podcast. Haha. I legitimately feel like an asshole. Like I'll listen back to it and I'm like, why am I such a jerk? It's just usually we record this for like 8 hours, so we I get unhinged. Everyone else keeps their cool. I'm just a spaz. But he says Shaw Brothers is a massive blind spot for me. I do love Mighty King Man though, not nearly as good as King Kong, but probably the best King Kong ripoff. Mikhail Woodcock, Dave, did you like Sukkubus 1999? I like contained setting horror, and this one caught me by surprise when I found out the other day. I adore Sukkubus. It is one of my all-time favorite kind of movies that nobody likes. I love that movie since I saw it as a kid. My favorite contained horror film would obviously be my favorite movie, Day of the Dead. I also adore Night of the Living Dead. And stuff like The Thing is contained for the most part. I won't say Dawn of the Dead because we start off in such a bunch of different areas, but Day of the Dead, Night of the Living Dead, The Thing, stuff like that. David Leather, never liked nausea, sober or otherwise, and he says, fuck it, get grumpy, I'll watch your show anyway. Mighty Peking Man changed my life. No, I will not explain. Great content as always. Thank you. Thank you. You're welcome. Yeah, I don't want to be grumpy all the time, though, because there's way too many shows out there of just people being like, here's my rant. Like, the RoboCop remake is terrible. I'm going to talk 4 hours about the RoboCop remake. And it's just like, or somebody could watch the RoboCop remake themselves and find out it's shit, or not talk about it at all. That sounds even better, actually. Elk Vomit, Ching Kong To was Shaw Brothers' Golden Boy and a badass. Alexander Fushang, R.I.P. And he goes on, but I want to mention, I wonder if, I don't know how common the name Fu Shang is, but I wonder if Oliver Stone, if he knew of Fu Shang in Vietnam, or he just used that name because Alexander Fu Shang, because one of the characters in Platoon is Fu Shang, just a very, very small character. On July 7th, July 1983, tragedy struck when Fu Shang, his younger brother, and fellow Shaw actor were involved in an automobile accident. Both Chang and Wong survived, but Fu Shang, aged 28, later died of his injuries at the hospital. At the time, the three were being starred in the 8-diagram Pole Fighter, in which Fu Shang was to be the hero. The film was partially rewritten and the remainder of the film was shot. In the finished film, Fu Shang's character abruptly disappears and the focus was put on co-star Gordon Liu's character. His funeral was organized by the Shaw Brothers Committee in Hong Kong. That is very sad. Then we have Uzi Suicide 666. Thanks, Dave, for all the hard work. Always look forward to these. Thank you. Every time I hear your name, Uzi Suicide 666, I just want to just throw up the metal horns. EC Misio, Jeremy, you need to pick Red to kill. I heard great things about Coming Home in the Dark. Have it bookmarked. Haven't seen any of the Fear Streets. No interest in them. Can't wait to hear your rant on the top 10. Very, very curious about everyone's top 10 this year. Hope you have fun, safe New Year's. Thank you. I did. Senior Dossier. Hello, Mr. Parker. As you helped me the other day finding the name of my beloved movie, From Beyond the Grave, I must ask you another film name. I know if anyone else, because I read this and I do not know it, if anyone else knows it, let me know. I remember a movie where the main protagonist was a black guy. I think he was a detective and had a revolver and a shotgun. The main villain looked like Mr. Boogedy or something like that. He used a cloak and had wrinkles and pale skin, and attacked people with some tumorous rolling balls things that look like giant meatballs. I remember watching it when I was a kid at the 90s. Probably the movie was late 80s or very early 90s. I mean, the rolling balls remind me of Phantasm 2 and 3 and stuff, if you're talking about that, but nothing else matches up. Ken Coakley. For some reason, I must have posted my SOV comment in the wrong video. I really like the trailer compilation shot on video. One that comes to mind is Tear on Tape from Continental Video. A nerdy guy comes into the video store asking the preparator, the late great Cameron Mitchell, which I actually think I've seen this one, for a movie that will scare him silly. From there, he shows trailers for movies on Continental Video, Blood Tide, The Deadly Spawn, and others. There is another one that is on YouTube with a very young Steve Buscemi, as well as an unrecognizable Mark Boone Jr., Batman Begins, Son of Anarchy, as two best friends going to the Grindhouse to watch a trailer show, which are fun to do, by the way. This was done in '86, and it looks it. Lastly, I'm not sure if it was shot on video, but there's a documentary about horror conventions called Phantasm, directed by Kyle Kucha. The movie can be watched on YouTube as well. I wonder what the other one you're talking about. I just watched Mark Boone Jr. in Memento. It's a good role in that. Ken Coakley returns. In return to your update, I saw the first three movies theatrically. I saw Roger Rabbit at a drive-in with 3 men and a baby. Roger Rabbit was huge when it came out. We had the trailer for it at the cinema I worked at. We didn't get the movie because it went to the theater across the street. A year later, we had Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Disney put a Roger Rabbit short to run before the main feature. The movie was selling out because the Roger Rabbit short. A lot of people thought it was going to run after the movie and missed it. They wanted refunds. They didn't care about Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. That's why I'm so surprised that Honey, I Shrunk the Kids is so beloved by younger people these days. I love that movie growing up. I also love Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I saw Prince of City theatrically 5 times. At the time I was 15, and Treat Williams, the star of the film, inspired me to want to act after seeing him in Hair. Yeah, he's pretty good in Hair. His performance in Prince of the City was amazing in the film. He starts off as a happy person who loves his job as a cop and then falls into a spiral. The film, like most movies, was shot out of sequence, so Williams had to go in to shoot in a different frame of mind each day. That took great skill. The film also turned me on to Jerry Orbach's acting. I also love Tony Mufano, the Exterminator is Danny's mobster friend, Rocky Grasso, as well as another Exterminator alumni, Tony DeBetto. Another film Treat Williams was in that I highly recommend is Once Upon a Time in America. Like Prince of the City, you need to put some time aside. Yeah, I've seen Once Upon a Time in America. It's just been years. I think I saw actually the shit version of that movie. I rented it on VHS when I was like 15, and I watched it, and I think I saw the shit butchered version of that. I bought the Blu-ray not too long ago to actually watch the good version. And he goes on, as for Drunken Master 2, which I saw as a double feature with the original Drunken Master at Boston's Museum of Fine Arts, I have been searching high and low for the original Cantonese version of the film, but all I could ever find was the English dubbed Legend of the Drunken Master, which also had a different soundtrack. Lo King Kong, the tall guy Jackie Chan fights near the end, was Chang's bodyguard in real life, and his associate that Chang fought before was Ho Song Pak, who is Liu Kang in the Mortal Kombat video game. Anyway, if you get to watch it, will you let us know if the film is in Cantonese? No website will say. Okay, I will, for sure. On the subject of the Shaw Brothers, that weren't in the box set, there was a good one called The Savage Five, starring Shaw Brothers mainstay David Chang. When the film is over, you will feel a little down. It packs a real wallop. Dan the Cameraman, Dave, you penis hole. I forgot to give you the correct answer for the best SOV movie on your last episode. Of course, the answer is Zombie 90 by Mr. Schnoz himself. It's like fine wine. It gets better with age. The obvious runner-up has to be Frankie and his pals. Remember the scene when all the monsters are doing the workout? Fucking awesome stuff. Shout out to my boy Tony. Alright, talk to you soon. Also, one more thing. Eat my ass, ha ha ha. If anybody doesn't know Dan the Cameraman, he suffers from mental illness. So, Peter England, come drink with me in the 36 Chamber of Shaolin. Back to the Shaw Brothers' favorite movies. Johnny Thompson, 5 Element Ninjas. Nathan Bartleball, the 36 Chamber of Shaolin, the 5 Deadly Venoms. But as a kid in me says, Super Inframed. David Gibson, dude, this is a top one. If I was to only pick one, Heroes of the East, but it could easily be 36 Chambers as well. Jake Criddle, Intimate, Confessions of a Chinese Courtesan. Jonathan Knight, Mad Monkey Kung Fu. Damon McCauley, Infrared Man, Jeremy White, The Boxer's Omen, Black Magic 2, 5 Animal Ninjas, Black Wizard, House of Traps, Return of the 5 Deadly Venoms, The 5 Deadly Venoms, City of a Ghost, Masked Avengers, Human Lanterns. It's one long title. I know it's like 10 movies. I'm just kidding. Kevin Keegan, Human Lanterns, and The Oily Maniac. Tough to choose one. Peter McCain, I think 5 Element Ninjas, but I also like Seeing of a Ghost. Boxer's Omen. Ron Munster. He says 5 Element Ninjas is awesome. Mark Humphreys, Hex and Black Magic. Matthew Cantor, Super Infrared Man. Sorry. Not Infrared Man. Every time I hear infra, I want to say Infrared Man. Inicio Hernandez, Seeding of a Ghost. Nick Mua, sadly, I have yet to see a Shaw Brothers feature. I will, though, as my late mother was fluent in Chinese. I believe she might have enjoyed such a film. Questions. Did you make any New Year's resolutions, sir? Nope, never do. Do you plan on keeping them? I never made them. Is there a film that fills you with joy and gives you a hopeful outlook on life when you're feeling down? Oh, I'll tell you one that gives me kind of a nice warm feeling, but also makes me tremendously sad is Scrooged. Every time I watch Scrooge and Bill Murray gives the speech, he's like, go out and give somebody I always get really teary-eyed. I guess it's some hopeful kind of touch. I think everybody feels like they can be an asshole sometimes, and has a little, but they have maybe the compassion in them deep down inside, no matter how much it is buried under a bunch of other shit. So for me, that's Billy Elliot. I don't know Billy Elliot. 3, what's the most movies you watched in one day? Oh, as a kid, I probably watched like lots, probably 6, 7, 8. I don't know. I didn't keep track, but some days probably a lot. But as an adult, I know I at least got 5 in. I got 5 in one day, and it's just too much. I have ADHD, so like I love movies, but to watch one, I got to get up and do something. I just, unless I'm feeling sick. So sometimes if I'm feeling a little sick, I will be able to squeeze in more. So how did you feel at the end of the said day? Probably like I didn't do much. Enjoy the remainder of the week, and please keep up the excellent work. Thank you. Derek Bourgeois. For favorite Shaw Brothers movie, he puts Norman J. Warren's in Seminoid. Later, he comes back and says, real answer, Seeding of a Ghost. Nathan Thomas Millander, 36 Chamber or Dirty Ho. Billy Pun, Come Drink With Me. Kid with the Golden Arm, 5 Element Ninjas. Dub Doubles, Black Magic, hard to pick 1 or 2 for various reasons. Christian Mickelson, love Seeding of a Ghost. Another favorite, Bamboo House of Dolls. Stephen Nemeth, 10 Tigers of Kang Twong, but you know there's about a handful of other films right on its heels for me. Shane Glass, 36 Chamber of Shaolin. Jay Ranella, Oily Maniac. Ken Costner, Shaolin Mantis. Zach Puccinelli, The 5 Deadly Venoms. Chauncey Palance, Boxer's Omen. David Luton, so many that I love. One of my favorite directors is the great Chang Chu. Here's a few of my Shaw Brother favorites. 8 Diagram Pole Fighter, 5 Element Ninjas, Mask Avengers, 36 Chamber of Shaolin. That one comes up a lot. Clan of the White Lotus, The Flying Guillotine, The Vengeful Beauty, and The Brave Archer, starring the brilliant Alexander Fu Sheng, who died tragically young, as we've heard. Eric Waters, 10 Tigers from Kang Twang, Kid with the Golden Arm, Master Killer, Bill Peterson, Boxer's Omen, Derek B. My real answer would be Seeing of a Ghost. Ron Munster, without question, The Master, aka 3 Evils. Yung Tang gives a career-defining performance, and it honestly should have made him a star, but it's his only real solo outing as a lead character. He was part of the Seven Little Fortunes opera troupe. And I forgot to hit Seymour. I always do that shit. Sorry about that, man. Pete Graham. Oop, that's a hard one. Shaw Brothers released so many great titles. Jesse Bard, of the ones I've seen, 36 Chamber of Shaolin or 5 Deadly Venom so far. Hope to be able to see more. So, the question of the week, and this is kind of cheating because next week I'm going to do my top movies of the year, but I want you guys to give me your top 10 horror films of 2021. Please just list them if you can. That would be great. And at the very end, I'll do a list where, like, let's say the number 1 of your guys's gets 10 points, the number 10 gets 1 point. I'm going to add them up, and I'm going to compare it to my list to see if I am completely off from the base of everyone else. So, if that sounds like something you'd want to do, please do it. If you don't have 10, you can send 5, you can send 3, and the higher it up, like let's say the number 1 will get 10 still, the number 2 will get 9, number 3 will get 8, and then I just won't rank any of your other ones. So send your favorite movies. Do it in order, though, and no more than 10. I will not count any more than 10. So there you go. Yeah, let's hop into the update. Okay, let's get into this update. First up is Nobody. I know it's not the 4K, but the Blu-ray literally was $10. To rent it was $15. I have to do it for a Patreon pick. No problem. This looks like a lot of fun, but I decided to go with the Blu-ray. When the difference is $12, yeah, I went with the Blu-ray for $10. But yeah, I hear good things about it. Next up is Saint Maud, which is a really good film. I only got a chance to watch it once. Great price on it, $8.24 movie. Yeah, good film. reviewed that one. So then we have Malignant, James Wan. My favorite James Wan movie, maybe besides Death Sentence. I really enjoyed this one. I know a lot of people don't like it, but I think they're missing the point that I think it's supposed to be fucking stupid and bonkers. Some people don't like that. I get it. Next up is Casablanca, which me and Jeremy watched a while ago. Great film for obvious reasons. Humphrey Bogart. Yeah, you guys know this one or have heard of it. Michael Curtiz, the director of Dr. X. We have Brainstorm with Christopher Walken and Natalie Wood. Louise Fletcher, isn't there? Cliff Robinson. Never seen this one. Looks like kind of a crazy mind kind of screw movie. Anyways, yeah, I look forward to checking this one out. I think this is the one that had that weird boating accident afterwards while making it. The Last of Shelia. I heard a lot of great things about this one. I think that who wrote this one? Was it Anthony Perkins was involved with this? Helped come up with this one. Heard a good mystery film. Anyways, heard great things about it. I know that Brian Sauer is a big fan of this film, and he talked a lot about it. So right when it got released on Blu-ray, I was like, oh, I need to pick that Last Days of Sheila up. Another one here, There Was a Crooked Man, that was from Warner Archive. This one is as well. I picked this up because it has a great cast, Kurt Douglas, Henry Fonda, but I really picked it up for Warren Oates. He's one of my all-time favorite actors, and I get all the Warren Oates I can in Blu-ray. So this looks like a lot of fun, cool stuff. And then we have Meatball Machine. This is a Terracotta release. Yeah, import here. This is a fun movie. Pretty crazy, nuts, bloody fight movie and whatnot. So I think a lot of people will enjoy this one if you've never seen Meatball Machine. Then we have some Mondo Macabros, the special edition one. School of Death. So Mondo Macabro does lots of great stuff. I love that cover art there. So yeah, anybody's ever seen this one right here? I've not, but 1974, great year. Sounded very interesting. From their limited edition line. Then we have Hiruko the Goblin from Tsukamoto, who is one of the best Japanese directors. This movie's awesome. This made my top 10 in 1981, so when they released it on Blu-ray, I had to have it. Just great stuff. If anybody's not seen this one, this is a really cool movie. Very entertaining. So then next up we have Sukkubus, which I've not seen. Again, great cover art from Mondo Macabro. Yeah. So I decided to just go with the whole 4-pack that they had on, was it Black Friday or something along those lines. They don't really disappoint. Most of their stuff is definitely worth watching. Then we have The Laughing Woman, who I've heard lots of good things about. I know it's always been kind of referenced as one of those kind of bizarre, weird, psychedelic kind of deals. It has Dagmar Lasseter in it, who is a handful of Euro horror films. Then we have some DVDs. We have Baptism of Blood. This looked really bizarre. Horrifying Family Secret. Just somebody holding a brain on there. Yeah, this one looks interesting enough for me to check it out. Asian Pulp Cinema. Yeah, grab that one. Then we have a Tokyo Shock. God's Left Hand, Devil's Right Hand. Yeah. Wanted to check this one out. Not seen it. I do like picking up some of these Tokyo Shock ones sometimes. Yeah. I have a bunch of them. So this one was relatively cheap for obvious reasons in this thin case here from the creator of Vampire Hunter D. Picked it up because it's a 1994 movie, English to Japanese with English subtitles. Darkside Blues. It's an anime. Supposed to be horror-oriented anime. So I know it's this little cheap thin case. It doesn't look. But hey, if it's if it looks like shit, I'll just find another release out there or something like that down the line if I like it. But yeah, that's the update. Back to the video. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching. And as always, have a good one.